Hello and welcome. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. And on this episode, I am welcoming a fellow Paisan. Another one this week, Alex Sanfilippo. Today's guest, he started the first company at he's 10 years old, selling used golf balls he found in lakes and woods around his neighborhood golf course. Now, Alex is the founder of Podprose, a software company focused on elevating the voices of independent podcast hosts and their guests. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Alex.
Gino, thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
You're running around a little kid. What possessed you to go out, find golf balls, and sell golf balls? Because I did cans, by the way. So I'm a little bit older than you, but we were around the neighborhood. We were getting cans recycled and bringing them. So I think golf balls is probably a better venture.
I mean, it's just a different time, right? Real quick, what made you decide cans? I'm totally curious.
Because I saw 5 cents. I'm like, dude, people are bringing them and they're just dropping them off all over the place. So me and my friends would get plastic garbage bags, go around the neighborhoods, collect the cans and bring them and recycle them. 5 cents back in the 80s was significant. You start getting 20 cans, you got $1, you got $1, you got a couple of packs of gum. That's what my thought process was.
I respect it. I've been following what you and Jake do, and I think that just so well aligns. You all see an opportunity that's like right in front of most of us. We're just like, how do we capitalize on this? You're like, it says 5 cents right here, so grab it and return it, right? Like, it's funny that's followed you through your whole life because I never thought about that, not once. But golf balls for me, I guess you could say my family kind of pushed me into it. What I mean by that is my mom and dad had us living in a neighborhood that was right across the street from a golf course, and we had the same rule that all the kids in the neighborhood had, which was do not go on the golf course. So, Gino, you know exactly where we ran to the second they let us outside. And this is early 90s. So I was just running outside straight across the street. We'd all meet on the golf course. One day there was a golf ball sitting there. There was no golfer. We looked, right? Like, we made sure no one's on the tee box and we're in the fairway. Like, there's no one there. And so I just picked it up and I was like, cool. I was like tossing up in the air. And a couple minutes later, someone rides by on a golf cart and says, hey, kid, what does that golf ball say on it? I said, Titleist Pro V1. And he's like, I'll give you $3 for it. And in that moment, a light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute, these are worth something? All these golfers hit them in the lake all the time. Can we get them out of the lake? And it's funny, for the first time in my life, it felt like I found something I rallied people around. Sure, it was only 10, but my brothers and other kids in the neighborhood, I'm like, hey, here's the plan. You're going to go do this. You're going to look there. We're going to clean them and we're going to sell them on Saturday morning and see how it goes. And that was my first, if you call it a business, my first opportunity in business or entrepreneurship. That was my introduction to it. And I thought it was really fun. I did that for a couple of years. You can't get away with it once you're not cute anymore, but from 10 to 12, it worked out great.
Well, Alex, there's one big distinction between what I did and what you did. The distinction was, in New York, there was no alligators. So I wasn't putting my life in limit risk to get golf balls on the golf course. I may have gotten maybe a homeless guy every now and again, but I think I could fend off a homeless guy. Alligators, grabbing the ball. I don't know if it's worth $3, but when you're 10 years old, $3 is a lot. Listen, I've got dollars on my desk, so I know exactly what $3 goes for. That's pretty cool. So you're 12 years old. You're like, time out. I'm getting a little too old for this. What's the next venture? What's the next thing you get into?
At that point is right around the time that eBay launched, or at least that I found it. And I remember my dad was looking for something specific. And you know how eBay is. It's still the same way. Like, if it's nowhere to be found in the world, it's on eBay. And that's just kind of how it works, right? And so he's looking for something specific. I was like, what is this? And he's like sitting there bidding with a second left. I'm like, wait, can I do that? And he's like, yeah, here. I had to use his login, right? But I immediately got into the game of flipping things, right? I found things that people scheduled at a bad time. It was going to end in the middle of the night. And back then it was before the software that would schedule your bid, and now it's just buy it now or purchase immediately. Like, there's all these different options. Back then it was only auctions. And so I was like, hey, this one ends at 3 a.m. If I stay up, which maybe wasn't the best idea, but if I stay up and bid on it, I'm going to get a better deal than someone would that if it ended at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I basically buy things that were interesting to me to see if I wanted it, right? And then sometimes I just flip stuff or I buy it in bulk. And so I did that for a couple of years as well, and just really fun. I wouldn't even call it a business, just strictly a hobby. And a lot of times I was buying toys. Again, this is the 90s, so we didn't have all the digital devices we have now, but I was really into toys as a kid. So I'm like, I'm going to buy huge lots of them, get the few I want, sell the rest. And I just started doing that sort of thing.
So I'm trying to make the connection in my mind. We've got golf balls. We've got eBay. Oh, yeah, let's go into podcasting. I see the clear connection into podcasting. How did that happen?
To fast forward a little bit, I did some remote work in real estate, which was really fun. I enjoyed it. And then 2000, what year was that? 2006, 7, 8 started happening, right? I got out of that. I went into the aerospace industry for a long time. So I did, and I'm very, going over many years of my life here really fast, but just kind of bridging the gap. So I went from doing my own entrepreneurial venture to going into a full-time career. And I did that for 15 years, really, really enjoyed it. But I knew it wasn't going to be forever. And the writing finally like ended up on the wall when I decided to start a podcast for myself to learn how to become an entrepreneur. It was like, I think I'm ready to move on from big corporate, and I think I want to do something of my own. I didn't know what it was. So I started interviewing people who had figured that out for themselves and moved on from a corporate job into entrepreneurship full time. So I did learn how to do that, but I also learned that I wanted to be in podcasting. I loved podcasting, like just absolutely loved everything about it. And I had so many people start asking me for help on all these different ideas and topics and stuff. And I just realized, hey, like I think this is what I want to get into. So I started really exploring that in an in-depth way. And that's ultimately got me into podcasting full-time as a host, but led to me also being a podcast service provider as well, and launching some software.
So Alex, I'd love to hear the difference from your perspective of the entrepreneurial mindset versus the corporate mindset. What did you learn on your podcast?
I'm going to way oversimplify it.
You have to. I'm not in aerospace. I'm just a real estate investor.
Right?
So let's keep this simple, okay?
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm going to simplify what I learned from so many people, but in corporate, especially when we went public. So at first we weren't public, and that's why I think I loved it for so long, as I was able to operate as an entrepreneur inside an organization, which has now been coined an intrapreneur in some cases, I guess people are calling it. So I was still had like this ownership mindset. Now I had some free thinking involved. And once we went public, and I even got up to C-suite level, I didn't have as much room to do that. I felt more like, for lack of a better term, I'm not trying to be rude, but I felt more like a cog in the system. Like what I needed to do was already set in front of me. And so it was just, hey, maintain, a little bit of growth here when the shareholders want us to. We'll talk to the board, see what they want to do. It turned into this very slow machine, which at the end of the day really was the goal. This company ended up being a multi-billion-dollar organization. It's like, that's great, really cool. I just didn't want that. I wanted the freedom. And so what I learned about entrepreneurship is, hey, it is a lot of ownership mentality. It's move really quick. It's try things, break things, and then try to fix them or try to move on. And so it's a lot of that type of stuff. And that's really what I wanted to do. And for me, the type of entrepreneurship I like, I would consider to be like even less on the corporate side and more just on the impact side. And what I mean by that is I love impactful type businesses. And for me, community driven is so important. So for me, I wanted to be somewhere where I could really serve somebody with a specific problem they're having and see them through it and help them continue to move on. And not do that where it's like thousands of people a day, right? And just like a quick turn type of thing. I want it to be like an actual community. And I just found that in podcasting. And to me, that was like kind of the big shift. And if I could share really quick, the 4 things I learned when I did my podcast that kind of made this whole shift happen is, 1, find an area of passion. I've already shared, for me, that was podcasting. So find your area of passion. Step 2 is to get into that community. So I started speaking at all the conferences. I started really getting involved with other podcasters through meetup groups in our local community. And then the third thing, again, becoming that entrepreneur, this is where it really like steps into play, is to find a problem that community is struggling with. So it's your area of passion. It's the community. Now you're looking for the problem that they're facing. And I always say the simple problem. I don't want to get into the big complex problem. And the last thing is to offer the fastest possible solution to that problem. And that's where the whole idea of Podmatch came into being. And the whole thing was just, I was speaking on stage. I got off. I asked as many podcasters as I could. There's about 2,000 people there. As many of them as I could. What are you struggling with? And I heard the same thing repeatedly. I'm having trouble finding the ideal guest for my show, or simplifying that process. Or I want to be a guest on shows as well, and I can't seem to find the right people to connect with. And so basically I came back. I'm like, how do we offer that solution? That's ultimately what we came up with Podmatch.
I'd love to be able to give a little, I guess, different take on what an entrepreneur is to me. Do you mind if I share mine real quick?
Please. I would absolutely love that.
It's interesting because I'm a big, huge Tony Robbins fan. And I think he said it, entrepreneurs are people that make enough money to pay for their mistakes. I think that's absolutely true because I've fallen in that category. I think entrepreneurs crave autonomy. We don't really want to be told what to do. We want to be able to have our freedom. But at that freedom comes some challenges. It can be lonely being an entrepreneur. It's not Gino, it's Jake and Gino for a reason, because I've done things alone, and it's really hard sometimes. There's a lot of fear being an entrepreneur because you don't know when the next paycheck is coming. I've been making payroll since 1995. I've had a business since 1995. So I'm effectively not a good person to work in an organization. And it can be scary being an entrepreneur because all the pressure is on you. But at the same time, we're sort of wired that way. We sort of want to be able to solve those problems. We want to be able to connect with people. We sort of want to be able to lead those organizations. So there's some amazing benefits to being an entrepreneur, but there's some also, I guess, cons as well in life. And the fact that you started Podmatch with that idea, I need to really repeat those for everybody. I'm Mackenzie, if you're listening to this podcast, I know you make fun of me, but if you've got a pen, you should write these 4 down because it's truly important. And this is, I think, the roadmap that why we created Jake and Gino. Find a passion. My passion, Jake and I, was not just real estate, but building a business and building wealth long-term. Multifamily, boom. One of the biggest, best vehicles to do that. The second one, get into the community. Find out what the community needs in multifamily. What are they struggling in that venture? The third one, find the problem. I think the problem itself in multifamily is, where do I find the money? How do I start? Well, there's syndication, there's creative financing, there's the community itself. There's so many different strategies you can learn. And the fourth one, offer the solution. Well, Jake and Gino is the solution. The students have closed over 80,000 units. We've got one of the best coaching programs out there. We are a premier multifamily community. And if you follow that framework in anything that you're trying to accomplish in life, is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. But that is what entrepreneurship is all about. Finding a solution, creating value. You're not chasing money. You're chasing opportunity. And guess what? The more opportunity you have, money is the result. Money will just end up showing up. So I think that's important. I'd love to share another story with you, Alex, really quick, if I could, because I think this
Yeah, real
highlights.
real quick, if I can just mention something back to that point, I do wanna hear that, for sure. I just wanna mention, like, it's not easy, but it's worth it, right? And there are some sacrifices that you made. Like, when I first got started, I remember my brother he loves his corporate job, works in corporate, but I was about a year into Podmatch, and he's like, "Man, it must be really nice to work whenever you want." I'm like, "I can work whenever I want, but I have to work." I'm like, "That's what you don't understand, and you're taking a week vacation. I don't do a week vacation right now." So to the point, I just think that you really you went through that, and I think that's super important for us all to remember. Like this, everyone doesn't do this because it's not easy, and we're not all wired for it. But anyway, sorry, continue your story. I would love to hear it.
No, not at all. And it really piggybacks off of what you're saying, why you started Podmatch. I took the opposite approach when I opened the restaurant back in 1995. I didn't open the restaurant, and this is the reason why ultimately I didn't feel like I was in alignment. It didn't fit my core values. I opened the restaurant to provide for my family. That's what most people do when they open a business. I need to provide for myself and for my family. And listen, that's a noble gesture. That's great. But what the marketplace says, they don't care about you. They care about value. They care about solutions. And if I had thought about that at the restaurant, and I was doing it down the road, I was starting to create value. I just found the better vehicle. If I had thought about, okay, I'm going to open a restaurant because there's a lot of people who are hungry. I want to create memories, create relationships, create a beautiful brand, and really have that permeate throughout the marketplace instead of thinking about myself first. I think the business would have grown. It would have been a lot more profitable. And I know there's a lot of small businesses out there that think like that because I was caught up in it and I was surrounded by a lot of those businesses. And it's no fault of our own because we're not taught this stuff. We're just taught we hate our jobs. Let's go start a business because we need to provide for our families. And that's the blueprint. And it doesn't sound as if you did that on Podmatch. That's why it's different. That's why it's been growing. It's been expanding. And that's why you love what you do because you've understood, hey, I'm not doing this to really provide for myself. I'm trying to provide for all the podcasters out there and all the people who are struggling out there. And if I can help them, as Zig Ziglar says, the more people you help, the better you're going to be off. So, I mean, I commend you. And I just wanted to share that story because it really aligns with what you've been doing with Podmatch.
Gino, that's so good. I mean, listen, go back and everybody listen to this, go back and re-listen to that. That's just it's so good. And that's really the essence of it. Like, it's not about us. And
Mm-hmm.
and I really a lot of people have been approaching me that are software people that are getting into this space. Like, how do I replicate what you do? I'm like, oh, well, what's your goal? My goal is to build it really big and sell it. I'm like, that does you didn't tell me who you're helping, how you're helping them. You just want to build it big and sell it, right? And full disclosure on my end, we have no plans to sell Podmatch or anything that we're doing. Instead, we just want to double down on how can we serve these people more accurately and better. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's just so important to remember, like when you're creating a brand, when you're building a business, whatever it's for, you have to say, hey, what am I doing this for beyond me, beyond my family? How is it my contribution to make the world a better place? Which maybe sounds a little bit weird, but the reality is the businesses that do really well are the ones that can answer that question really well.
Yes, I love that. Stop back and listen to that again. And Alex, you bring up an amazing point. The internet and Instagram has told us that we need to scale up. it's sexy. You need to get to 20,000 units. You need to have $1 billion in assets under management. It's okay if that's not what you want. You have to understand what your goals are. And I think building something just to exit out after 3 or 4 years, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually very difficult. And I commend you for doing that. But then after you've done that, what's the next step? Is it to build another thing and on the hamster wheel? Are you trying to create wealth, or are you just trying to create a rip for the next 3 or 4 years? And it's interesting to understand, going back to what your values are. If you're all about long-termism and creating wealth, well, doing that is not going to create ultimate wealth. It's going to create a job for you, and you're going to continue to be on the hamster wheel. I really want to know Podmatch. You're starting to build it up. How can real estate investors use it? Like, I'm an investor. I want to grow my brand. I want to raise capital. Give me some tips on starting my own podcast.
Yeah, I won't get into the actual essence of starting a show, because that would get, obviously, Gino, that's what we're here for. Like, we get super like, here's the mic you need. Here's this. If you do want that, if you just Google how to start a podcast Buzzsprout,
Yes.
that's my favorite. That's how I learned how to podcast, and they update it every year. I learned years ago using that. So, how to start a podcast at Buzzsprout. If you type that in, it'll give you all like the ins and outs of it. Quick spoiler, it's not nearly as difficult as you think. It's actually pretty straightforward. And Gino, like, you guys have, at time recording, like 1,200. I don't know. You have crazy amount of interviews, some crazy amount of episodes, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Like, you guys have done a lot of them.
We've done
and
a
so
lot.
It's not really as complicated as people make it out to be. Like, yes, it can be a lot of work, but getting it spun up and started isn't a lot of work. Here's what I want to go into here is why I think, as a real estate investor, multifamily investor, why you should consider having a podcast. The main reason, I'd say, unless you plan on doing something like Jake and Gino and like getting into the education side of things, if it's strictly to how can this really impact my business, it's a relationship builder. One of my friends here in Jacksonville, he always says he's never been good at golf, and he really despises it, apparently. And he says, my golf is my podcast. He's like, it's where you can go and have a couple-hour conversation and not have to worry about anything else going on. I'm like, I like it. So yeah, he always says, like, my podcast is the new golf. And the reason I think that's so important to think about is, here's the thing. If you're getting into this and there's someone in your city that's a city planner, someone on the council, someone that you want to meet, if you say, hey, can I get coffee with you? Everyone else has asked them that same week. Just that same week. Everyone else who's in your same boat has asked them that. But if you say, hey, I got a recording studio, I'd love to actually capture some of your story and what made you so passionate about, for me, Jacksonville, Florida, right? What made you so passionate about Jacksonville, Florida? I'd love to talk to you about that. And we can go to my recording studio if you want, or we can record it remote however you want to. We can get some of the content out there. I'd just love to hear more about how you got where you are. Guaranteed, you're the only person asking them that. Everyone else wants coffee. You're the one who wants to actually capture this story. And to kind of give an overview of what this looks like, I got a friend here in Jacksonville, Florida, who I think has done this really well. He's a realtor, and he's always looking to build those connections. And he started a podcast called This Is Jax. And it's just capturing people's stories who have moved to Jacksonville, what they love about it. And he's a realtor. So at the same time, he's also saying, here's what I'm seeing in the market here in Jacksonville. And he has built some of the most incredible connections that there is no way he'd ever have access to, while making it valuable for whoever gets to listen to this. And I think that is a great opportunity that we have to do some brand building in a really unique way.
Alex Sanfilippo says on this podcast that podcasting is the new book. You don't have to write a book, folks. You can actually use a podcast and transcribe your podcast and get your book from your podcast. So I think you can kill two birds with one stone. And I 100% agree. I don't think I've ever had that opportunity to say, well, if I'm a realtor and I want to take someone out for a cup of coffee, jump my podcast. That is, I love that. That is phenomenal. But what makes a successful podcast? When you're starting a podcast, Jake and Gino started a podcast 7 years ago. It's because we thought it was cool. Let's start a podcast. We didn't have any type of persona. We didn't have any type of business plan. We didn't have any idea of why we were starting it. Was it raising capital? Was it for education? Was it just two guys talking about real estate? To this day, I don't know why we started it. We just did. If you're going to start one, put me in the mindset of, how should I start it? Like, the structure of the show, who should I be targeting? What makes a successful podcast?
Yeah. First off, it is cool. I just got to say it is
really
cool.
Is.
I don't think that's reason enough to start. But by the way, you've interviewed some cool people. I mean, even today, I was just listening to like a handful of episodes. I'm not going to go through them all, but like I even wrote down some of the names and stuff, just like some incredible people you guys have had opportunities to meet and have a conversation with. That again, if you didn't have the cool podcast, you wouldn't have those opportunities necessarily. I'm not trying to sell you short at all. It just gave you a common bond that you can say, hey, we can actually talk. There's a reason for us to talk. Mm-hmm. And so again, podcasts are cool, but what makes one successful? The first thing that you guys have nailed, by the way, is keeping it consistent. You'd be shocked at how many people don't consistently podcast. And I have a industry report that I help keep up with and stuff like that to kind of track who's sticking with podcasting. And believe it or not, less than 50% of people who start a podcast make it to even just 8 episodes. And the thing is,
Really?
meaningful track. Yeah, isn't that wild? Like less than half make it to 8 episodes. And here's no one knows the first 8 episodes. I tell people like those are for you. Someone will go back and listen to them, but it's going to be very rare that you get serious traction before that. As a matter of fact, I find that the line for an independent podcaster seems to be about 100 episodes. Which you're doing one a week, that's 2 years of work before it really starts taking traction. And
Mm-hmm.
listen, just like entrepreneurship, podcasting takes work. So it's not like a silver bullet where you like start a podcast today and tomorrow Gino's coming on your show, right? Like it doesn't necessarily work like that. Like you have to work your way to it, just like with an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur. But the first thing I say that leads to a truly successful podcast is one, committing to being consistent. I tell people commit to 2.5 years and just see what happens. Like, does it work? Like, do you hit 2.5 years and like you're like, okay, I've got some traction here. At the end of the day, I also think that traction, that idea, and you kind of shared about social media earlier, is kind of up for debate. Here's the thing. If you have a really specific podcast like Jacksonville, Florida, right? You're not going to have people listening all over the world. And you wouldn't want that because then it's going to ruin all your data, your analytics and all that because it's just quote unquote lots of people listening. What you want is just the specific people that are in your niche. Now it leads me to the next thing I think that makes a great podcast is actually having a niche, having something that you focus on. Like I love, Gino, that you and Jake focus on multifamily investing. Like entrepreneurs strictly wanting to be in that space. Like that is a true niche. And some people might tell you, well, man, if you just go like investing in general, you get more people listening. Maybe, but much less focused, much less on a topic that you can actually serve on. And so my thing, again, stay consistent, but also find the real niche that you can get into. So if you're like, I'm going to start a podcast, like what is it that you're going to show up and serve with that someone else isn't? And there's so many ideas here. I'll just riff one real quick. Again, Jacksonville, Florida. I live near the ocean, right? And Gino, I think you live probably close to the ocean as well, right? And here's the thing: there's surfing like crazy out here. If I made a local surfing podcast, I don't think there are any of them here, like Jacksonville, Florida surfers. I bet it would do really well among a few thousand people that are really passionate about surf. Every morning, I'd come out with the surf report. I'd come out with the storms we're going to see this year, right? Like I'd come out with all that type of stuff. And I'm not a surfer. And then here's the thing. If I wanted to monetize that podcast, I'd go find a custom surfboard builder and tell them, hey, anyone I send your way, I want 20% of that, right? And like, not that we're getting into the monetization stuff, and really your best course for monetization is your own product, your own service. But I just kind of shared something that's like, that's a small audience in a real niche that you could actually probably turn into a real entrepreneurial venture if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. So consistency, niche focus. Anything else we should be doing?
Yeah, take some pride in the quality of it as well. Like right now, Gino and I are recording in a really high quality recording studio, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to have this, but a lot of people are just like, what's the cheapest or free option? And you get what you pay for, right? Or that you don't pay for, and you want it to be a great experience. There's been many shows I've stopped listening to because the experience wasn't good. The quality, the audio, or even the video in some cases, it just didn't really work well for me. So in the car, it was hard to listen to, or I'm running it. It's like I'm always pulling my phone to turn it up and down. Those type of things you don't want to do a lot of. So have some pride at the beginning, and none of that stuff is difficult. What I'm saying here is just be willing to invest a little bit. And again, it's not a lot of money, but don't look for all the free options. Say, okay, what's going to get me a good baseline? I think my entire setup here, from like just video, audio, and this, I think I paid like maybe $400 for it, and I consider it my forever gear. It's good. No one's ever gonna be like, man, I wish your quality audio and video was better. Like it's high enough quality that's working well. So I think, again, have some pride in what you do. Really think about like, okay, what can I do as a baseline to make this thing sound really good for people?
To play devil's advocate before we go to the commercial break, don't use that as an excuse. Well, I don't know how I'm going to look. I don't know how I'm going to sound. The first, I don't say couple hundred shows were not really that good from Jake and Gino. We met Brandon Turner on a podcast, and he had his Sony 6400 camera, and Jake, being the growth mindset, was like, dude, we need that camera. By the way, what's your mic? So don't use it as an excuse. And maybe you record the first 10 or 15 and maybe don't launch them because you don't like the quality, but you get better. But put them out there. It's okay that you put them out there, and it's all about timing and testing. You will get better. You will learn. If you go on Alex's website on Podmatch, there's a lot of people there that are already podcasting. You can start getting on their shows, asking them what they're using. So don't use that as an excuse. $400, even if you've got to spend $4,000 in the long run, if you get one client from that and you're able to build a business, it's so worth it. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor. Now, Alex, the podcasting is amazing. And I was wondering if we could go into the branding aspect of it a little bit real quick. I love the stories you tell. Can you talk a little bit about storytelling and about making a podcast more entertaining? Because I think the thing that we get caught up in is we're all about education, cash on cash returns, cap rates, how much did this deal cost? And we get lost in IRR and all these things that we think that are important. But when you're driving in your car or you're on your treadmill or you're taking a walk trying to get some golf balls, it can get really painful listening. How do you make it entertaining as well as it being educational?
Yeah, and finding the interstate between those two things is so important. I actually learned this from someone you just referenced. Brandon Turner's a personal friend of mine, and he one time told me, he's like, "Hey man, like it needs to be entertaining but also educational." And he's like, "It can't be one or the other because it just loses its depth or it just becomes really like make your eyes roll back, right?" So it's so important we figure that out. And for me, I think about my upbringing. I was brought up in church, still a church guy, and sometimes I can't remember the points that the pastor makes, but I can always remember the stories. I can even go back 10 years and remember the story. And typically, if I can tie the story to the main point, I can remember the main point as well. And that is not something that's uncommon. Most of us are wired that way. There's few of us that have that type of memory. They can just remember everything, right? But most of us are wired to remember a story because it draws us in. And if you can connect a point to it, it's so important. And so I'm a work in progress, but I think it is so important that we share stories along the way with what we've got going on, right? And then at the same time, tie the point to it or tie like, okay, here's the point. Here's the story that goes along with it. Here's the point again. Find any way to do it that's comfortable for you, but it's got to be some entertainment. And Gino, that's one of the reasons I like your podcast. I think you do it really well. You had Renee Rodriguez on, and it was a lot of data. Like it was a lot, but you guys did a good job, and so did Renee, about bringing stories into it to make it actually stick. Because if you took all the stories out and just made, okay, now it's only a 20-minute episode, right? And it was all the data points, I'd be like, what is this guy talking about? You know, like this
I
is
do.
so much. Like, how do I apply this? Right. But he shared his own story on that podcast, which I recommend everyone go and listen to that one. Super good. He shared his own story about losing over 100 pounds and like how he carried that pack. And he's like, this is like the weight I lost. Right. And like it really reinforced the point of like, oh, maintaining that weight is important for your longevity, especially if you want to live an active lifestyle. And like that was his point. But if you would have just said, maintain your weight for by living an active lifestyle, you're going to thank yourself later. If he just said that, I wouldn't have even remembered this point that I just shared. So I think that it's so important that we find a way to make it entertaining. And at the same time, again, making it educational as well, but trying not to make it go too long. What I've been realizing in podcasting is that less can sometimes be more, not always. Some people have long form shows, but if you can keep it a little bit shorter while keeping it entertaining just on one singular topic, do another episode with something else. And that takes time, it takes expertise, but the more you can do that, especially if it's like a solo podcast, man, I'm telling you, like that's the power of it. So yeah, storytelling, super important. And just think about your own stories or bring people on that you know have that story. And always remember, okay, we got to tell the story to reinforce the education that we're providing.
Renee Rodriguez on that show shared a story about a person who is just sitting there. And this relates to anybody listening to this. When we're a little uncomfortable in life, and he said there was a man on a boat and he was heading towards Niagara Falls, and he didn't have a motor and he didn't have oars. And he said, what do you call that man? Well, you call that man or woman screwed. He said, that's not the tragedy of the story. The tragedy is if someone had told that person a few hundred yards upstream to say, hey, up downstream, you've got troubles. Get ready. Get a boat, get an oar, get a motor, and get yourself out of harm's way. And that's how most of us think. Most of us live life by saying, hey, it'll happen in the future. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it. And I think if you can picture yourself in that boat heading towards Niagara Falls and you've got the ability to take action today, well, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the falls where you have no plan, you have nothing, and you're going to go over the falls, or you have the ability to do that today? So he is a master of communication, the way he amplifies his message. And also, I agree 100% with you. Grow's a great show. It was an excellent podcast. Now, Podmatch, how have you built it, and how does it help people, I guess, get on more shows and even to build their own podcast?
Yeah, so it's all custom code. So right when I got started, I have a close personal friend of mine. He's been a friend for years. We were in each other's weddings in like 2011 and 2012 or something like that. And so we've known each other for a long time. He's a software guy. So I called him up when I had this idea. And basically what I wrote out for everybody who's like, okay, what is this Podmatch thing? It's a way to connect podcast guests and hosts for interviews. It works really similar to how a dating app connects people for dates, but instead of connecting for dates, this connects you for podcast interviews. So if Gino wanted to be a guest and talk on shows about multifamily investing, it'd find a podcast host saying, that's the type of guest I'm looking for. And it would automatically make that connection, or vice versa as well. And we connected through Podmatch, which was really cool. So, which I always appreciate. So that was the idea behind it. So I pitched this idea to this friend and he loved it. So we did the right thing and immediately called a lawyer and said, draft us up some paperwork. Let's make this thing official, right? Because that's what you do. That's how you protect your friendship and your business. So we did that legally and we just kind of hit the ground running. So we built it totally custom from day one. And the whole idea, once again, is can we make that connection between guest and host faster, but also streamline the administration between it? And so something Gino said a little while ago, which I think is so important. If you're like, hey, I think I want to do this podcasting thing, please start on the guest side. Try 2 or 3 episodes and see if you like it. I find some people are like, this is miserable. I'm like, great. You just saved yourself a ton of time by not going and launching your own show if you don't like it, right? But the reality is you might find, okay, I love this. I'm hooked. I want to do more of it. That's when you go start a show. And again, I shared like how to start a podcast Buzzsprout. That's the best guide I've ever found. That's how I learned. And once you have a show, you can add to Podmatch in a matter of minutes and start finding guests and connecting with people that are outside of your network. And I really like expanding beyond a network in podcasting. That's why one of the main reasons behind Podmatch is because your network is who you already know, but you want to expand that so you can introduce more people into your network, right? And so I think it's a beautiful way to be able to do that. But that was the whole idea behind it. That's how we've been able to develop it. So there's 3 partners, me, my wife is another one, and Jesse. And I guess if we had to have roles, I'd be probably CEO, Alicia be COO, and Jesse CTO, right? Like if we had to have like traditional roles in it, that's kind of where we fall into play. And we've had a blast. It's been a ton of fun doing this.
Now, I know when you launched it, everything was perfect, all the bells and whistles. Maybe not. How has it evolved in the last few years? Because it's almost like when you launch a website, there's so many errors, there's so many things you didn't see, there's so many things you learn throughout the process. How has it evolved since you started it?
When we first launched, the best advice I got, because I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist, and most of that's behind me at this point because I've learned to look for the cues. But naturally, left to my own accord, I liked things to be quote unquote perfect, which means I don't like to do anything because nothing's ever perfect. But I previously I always had that in my mind. But a close friend of mine, he wrote a book called Start Ugly. And the concept of Start Ugly is launch that MVP, minimal viable product, as fast as possible. Forget all like the bells and whistles. Just get it out there and see if it sticks. And so we took that method. We launched it. I pitched the idea to my co-founder, Jesse, on March 10th, 2020. And on June 15th, 2020, we launched. And for a software spin-up, that's extremely fast, just a few short months. We didn't have a logo. I had typos everywhere. But I also had the contact information of all the people at that conference that I mentioned, like where I got the idea, right? I had all their contact information. So I asked all of them, hey, test this. Tell me if it works. Tell me if this is what you're looking for. And I had people say, hey, you should really get a logo. And I would just respond, hey, we'll work on that, but does it work? Yeah, it works really well. Hey, I found 10 typos. Great. I don't want to know about them yet. Does it work? And so at the end of the day, we launched this right because I had learned from people much smarter than me going before, which is like just starting ugly. And you mentioned when I mentioned starting a podcast, I said like invest in some gear. The better thing to do is just start. The first time I recorded a podcast, it was with my cell phone in the car. Like I didn't even know the good environment to use, right? But at the end of the day, we launched that way. And what we do after that is what matters. And what you do after that is what matters in your business, with your podcast, with any venture you get into, is focusing on continuous improvement. Not perfection, continuous improvement. Start as fast as you can. Here's the thing, like we use Brand Turner as an example. He talks about him learning more about real estate investing when he got his first terrible deal, which was his first deal, right? Then he learned with all the books, all the research, everyone he's ever talked to. Like you'll learn the most when you hit the ground. So just hit the ground faster and then focus again on that continuous improvement. And that's been our goal because we're very community driven. We talk to the people who use Podmatch and say, hey, what can we do better? How can we improve this? What else would you like to see? And always just listening for that feedback and slowly but surely making it a better and better product for people.
Alex, you've dropped a little nugget I would love to share with everyone is if you want feedback and you want people to tell you how much you suck, you're going to get a lot of that feedback. Okay. So if you ever want to know if something's good or not, just ask people and they'll tell you, really, logo, seriously, does the damn thing work? I'm not worried about the minutia. And that's the problem right there. Most people are so worried about the minutia and are so tunnel focused, they don't see the big picture. They don't see the opportunities because they're looking at the little things. Let them look at the little things while Alex is focusing on the bigger thing, which is really, really important. Before we sign off, the vision for Podmatch. What's the vision for your company? Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
Yeah, without vision, people perish. I'm a firm believer in that. It's so important to have the vision. Right now, what we've just decided to double down on is becoming more of the Amazon of podcast interviews. And what I mean by that is Amazon didn't show up and do anything new. Now, don't get me wrong, they had some serious innovations, but at the end of the day, they got you the product that you wanted to your front door, which you could easily go to a store and get the same product, all the same things, right? But what they did is they simplified it so much that now people are like, man, 2 days it's going to be here. It only takes me a second, right? And that's what we're wanting to solve because the recent reality we've had about podcasting is on either side of the mic, people are only getting to do what they really love about 10% of the time. And the other 90% is the administration, all the different things that go into it, especially if you're on the
Mhm.
host side. Like what Gino's doing right now is so much more work than what I'm doing. When I sign off, I'm like, cool, tell me if you need anything. And I might get a few things they need from me, right? But Gino and his team have got to go through and do a lot of work. And so our focus, again, independent podcast guest and host, is to simplify that process for them. So it's just a few clicks of a button. They can get where they want to be faster and we can streamline the rest. So that's really the vision of it is like, can we just remove the friction so that 10% of what you love can become 50%? You can do it much more of your time. And that at the end of the day really is going to be our goal and our vision because we think that that's what actually impacts the listener's life is you behind a microphone. And we want to make that happen more.
I'm a real estate investor. I know I need to build a brand. I know I need to get onto more shows and possibly even start my own show. How do I continue the conversation with Alex and Podmatch? Where can I find you guys?
Yeah, thank you for that. Podmatch.com/free will kind of bring you into everything I do. You can see Podmatch from there. And any way you reach out, you're going to get me. But that's always my favorite place to send people. Podmatch.com/free. Give you some quick wins and stuff like that to help know if this is really the right step for you.
You have a young Alex Sanfilippo running around the neighborhood, and all of a sudden, somebody drives up to him one day and says, "Hey, kid, I'll give you $3 for that golf ball." And Alex looks puzzled and goes, $3? Really? Here you go. And then he runs off to the rest of his neighborhood and he says to his friends, "Guys, I got ourselves a gig for a couple of years. I really like this. I think we're going to make some money doing this." He hits 12 years old. All of a sudden, he's not the cute kid anymore. He's got to figure out another gig. He's got to get another strategy going on. He gets into the real world, ends up working for corporate. But then when he's at corporate, he's got this idea, this dream to start his own business, to become an entrepreneur. So he starts a podcast to learn about entrepreneurism. And I love the four steps or the four things you need to be is really the passion, the getting into the community, finding a problem and offering a solution. And by following that 4-step process or the 4-step framework, or if you want to call it a map, whatever you want to do, it's led him to create Podmatch and to create a solution for those other people out there trying to amplify their story, trying to amplify their voice. If you want to do that, go to podmatch.com and start working with Alex. Alex, any final words today, my friend?
Man, yeah, thank you for that, by the way. That was really well said. I kind of just like want that like clip right there. That was beautiful. Yeah, the last thing I'd say is remember like kind of what we said toward the beginning, but this has to be about more than just you. And if you're thinking multifamily investing, you're like, well, it's for my family. What else is that for? No, it's to provide a solution for somebody else who's going to be able to live there. Give them a great experience. Find the way to pull yourself out of the equation, right? And to make it about somebody else. The more we can say, I'm here to serve somebody else, the better we can do. And on top of that is don't compare the way you serve today to someone else's year 20. Don't be like, I got to be like Gino and have thousands of doors, right? No, Gino didn't start off with thousands of doors. If you're starting today, say, who's the one person I can serve today? Because that's all I can do right now. And then get a second, and then get a third, and let this thing just evolve naturally. I find that's the best way to build a brand, to build a reputation, to really serve as an entrepreneur.
To build an enduring community and an enduring organization. Jake and Gino, we often like to say, we believe in the long term and real people doing real deals. Thanks, Alex. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gino. Appreciate it.